What does this mean for the Jets? Is this a big chance to sort of maybe a Subway Super Bowl or something in the making after the Giants' big win this year?
That's the fascinating thing about this. We have no idea what it means for the Jets because we don't know how they're going to use this guy. I mean, the Jets obviously with Mark Sanchez, their quarterback, who's supposed to be their franchise quarterback, being signed to a fairly large deal himself.
Right, he's got a 3-year extension, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's going to be the quarterback going forward, we think. So the question is, how do you use this guy? I mean, Tim Tebow obviously is a different kind of quarterback. You can use him in these wildcat formations that have become in vogue in recent years. And who knows, if Sanchez doesn't play well, if he continues to struggle, because remember, toward the end of last year, there was, not only was he not playing well, but there was a lot of talk about, was he working hard enough?
Right.
Is this the guy to lead us forward? So at least now there's another guy to push.
But they're showing a vote of confidence in Sanchez, it seems, given this pretty hefty contract extension.
Yes. But, I mean, first they brought in Drew Stanton as a backup quarterback to sort of push him as well. Because in the past, he didn't really have a credible backup behind him. And then now this guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Now, is this guy going to be, a cohesive figure? I mean, obviously, he seems to be a figure that is draws a lot of emotion from people. I think it's a fair way to say it, right?
Yeah, I don't think that you can.
Here's a guy extremely religious, moving into the Jets. The Jets just don't strike me as exactly the kind of most homely place. So Denver seems like a more
and moving to New York,
New York of all places.
You know, I mean, it's going to be an odd fit. I mean, Tim obviously is from Florida originally, went to the University of Florida. He was in a sort of a very southern conservative area, then went out to Denver and did very well there, just in the brief span that he was the starting quarterback. This is a totally different deal. Obviously here it's a fishbowl. He's going to be on the back page all the time on the tabloids.
That's right.
It's going to be a fascinating experiment.
Try to find him compromised in some position somewhere. Whether it's possible, we don't know.
So that's. I mean, it's a story about what's going to happen off the field, how he's going to be accepted, how he's going to get along here in New York as it is on.
I believe there's already been tweets out from some Jets players who aren't necessarily too happy about this, right?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, because they have their quarterback, and Tim Tebow has been such a polarizing figure, not just for the off-field stuff that you were talking about, but also just how good is he?
Right.
You know, I mean, in the NFL, quarterbacks throw. It's not like college where you can get away with just, running around, breaking tackles. Tim Tebow, it still is an open question whether he's an NFL quarterback.
Okay, well, we'll see. Now, another big sort of breaking news, almost simultaneously with this.
Amazing.
Sean Payton, head coach of the New Orleans Saints, suspended without pay for this year for a really ugly scheme, this bounty scheme for wiping out players. Tell us a bit about that.
It's a fascinating situation. It almost feels like college football. We're used to seeing, with colleges, coaches getting suspended or punished for breaking NCAA rules. And it's kind of the same thing all over again here with Sean Payton. I don't know if any of us were expecting an entire year. This is almost uncharted territory. Like, what do you do now? Do you just have an interim coach for the entire year and then just a year later just pick up where you were before?
I mean, obviously he's not supposed to, but could it be possible on the side he's sort of feeding play instructions and stuff? I mean,
I think it's pretty clear that whatever the rules of the road here as far as making sure they adhere to what the NFL wants done, the Saints are going to have to play by the letter of the law.
They've had their knuckles wrapped pretty hard here.
So,
but then again, tell us about this scheme, though. I mean, ultimately, a bounty that rose as much as $50,000 to players to wipe out star players of the opposing team before the game, and they were like Brett Favre and others were targeted in this, right?
Kurt Warner. But you know what's funny about that? We actually earlier, after this all came out, we went through the tape and noticed and just took notes of how many players they actually took out. It wasn't that many. And this was over a couple of years. So it wasn't so much about the money.
Principle behind
exactly.
it,
right. I mean, these guys are making $1 million.
But also,
doesn't
this go on without the money? I mean, isn't that sort of the whole point of trying to sack the quarterback to a certain extent?
Right. It's their job.
It's the financial incentive that was the ugly part of this, right?
This goes on. It's been going on for a long time. The Saints just got caught.
Right.
And now
really, there's been payoffs.
Well, that's the thing that players were saying, that like this is how the NFL is. It's you are trying to take out the other guy. You aren't supposed to be making payments like this, but this is not the first time this has ever happened.
Now, does it say anything about the NFL starting to become more concerned about injuries? I mean, I'm an Aussie. I follow Aussie rules, and people think that Australian rules is a dangerous sport because there's no protective gear involved. But really, American football is really the most destructive, it seems to me, injury-wise of all football codes, simply because of the amount of force that's involved in that. There's a lot of attention now on the dementia and everything else that's come from this. So is the NFL becoming stricter and tougher on these sorts of things?
You would have to say, like, from a legal standpoint, they had to put their foot down here, because you can't have the NFL taking a blind eye to this when it's been proven that this team was trying to injure guys and paying players for it. I mean, it'd be one thing if the players were just doing this themselves, but when you have the defensive coordinator, at least at the time, being part of this,
right,
and the coaches at Sean Payton having been told about it and still not putting a stop to it, the NFL obviously had to step in and do something.
Yeah, I mean, so there's no suggestion that Payton was kind of like oblivious to all this or anything.
No,
this was,
this was the defensive side of the ball, but everything we've been told was that they'd been told to put a stop to it and they didn't do it, and so this is the result.